And with that, we're going to conclude our series today. Better not to marry is what we've been calling it. And hey, these are not my words. I didn't come up with better not to marry. Where did those words come from? They came from the disciples when Jesus was asked about marriage and divorce, and Jesus actually raises the bar. And he says, no, you don't understand. God created marriage. And no one should ever separate what God has made because it's a good thing. It's a good thing. And when the crowd hears it, when the disciples hear what Jesus says, they come up with this phrase in Matthew chapter 19, verse 10, which this really has been the foundational text for this whole series. If this is the situation, if marriage is hard, it's never to be separated, we got to pursue God's vision for it, and it's between a husband and a wife, if this is the situation, it's better not to marry. That was the reaction of the followers of Jesus when he really said, this is what marriage is about. It's forever, and it's special, and it's unique. And so what is Jesus saying? He's not actually trying to lead us to conclude that marriage is too hard. No, what is he saying? He's saying because it's hard, you need to fight for it. You need to have a resolve in you to fight for it. And you start before it. You start before you get married. You fight before it. And then after you get married, what do? You fight to stay close because everything is going to try to pull you apart and you try to fight to stay close. And then you also fight in your thoughts. On the inside, Jesus says part of the problem with marriage is that we're fighting an inner battle, a hardened heart. And if we want to stay married and if we want marriage to go well, then we've got to fight our thoughts because marriage is hard. But actually, just as we're about to find out, Solomon, who is writing to his sons about all the things he's learned in life, he writes this in Proverbs 18:22. And it's a little bit of a contrast to sort of the tone of that Matthew verse. Here's what it says. He who finds a wife, and remember, this is written to his sons. That's why it has a male perspective here. He who finds a wife, we could easily say he who finds a spouse, finds a good thing and obtains favor from the Lord. So here we are in this tension of, on the one hand, marriage is hard, and on the other hand, but marriage is good. Marriage is worth it. All of us who are married, all of you who aspire to maybe remarry someday, or one day you hope to get married, or you just care about marriage. You care about the institution of marriage, the state of marriage, your friends who are married, your kids' marriages. Do you know what we want? We all want the same thing. Secular, Christian, whatever. Those of us who get married, we want a good and satisfying marriage. I've never met someone who says, I don't want a good and satisfying marriage. That's what we want. That's what she wants. That's what you want. Look, you can agree on that. You can maybe mix it up about some other things, but at the end of the day, you agree about the vision. We want a good and satisfying marriage. We both want to be able to navigate the hard. We both want to be able to figure out how did two people becoming one person, two backgrounds, two perspectives, two personalities becoming one, how do we navigate through our own selfishness? Because we believe that when we become one and we become unified, that it's better than we were before. He who finds a wife, he who finds a husband, she who finds a husband obtains favor from the Lord. So let me ask a question. Very important question. Do you have a good and satisfying marriage? Do you have one? What if right now you don't have one? And you've kind of been listening or coming most of these weeks of this series, and you're thinking, is there hope for us to turn this around? And maybe you're here today and you've heard a few things over the past couple of weeks, maybe some things on your own as you've been kind of spurred on or interested. Maybe you've had a few conversations, but maybe you're sitting here today and you're like, okay, is there anything else you can say today that will steer my marriage to be good and satisfying? Like that's really where you want to be. That's really what you want. Maybe you're newly married and things are good right now. And you're coming and you're like, oh, can you just share something that will keep us there? Because, we have this friend or our parents, that they went off the path and we don't want to do that. We want to preserve this. We want to stay here. Or maybe you're not married and you're here and what you should be thinking about, what does a good marriage look like? Is there anything I can do now? Is there anything that I can do after I get married that will equal a good and satisfying marriage? There are some things that will steer you to a good and satisfying marriage. What will steer you to accomplish that vision together, a good and satisfying marriage? Well, let's back up a couple of the verses before this proclamation that finding a spouse is a good thing. If you want the fruit of marriage, a good and satisfying marriage, and let's listen to Proverbs 18, 20 and 21. With the fruit of a person's mouth, his stomach will be satisfied. He will be satisfied, how? With the product of his lips. Death and life are in the power of the tongue, and those who love it, respect it, will eat its fruit. Your satisfaction in your marriage, according to this proverb, will always be connected to how you leverage the power of your words. You will eat the fruit of your words in your marriage. And so if we're asking the question, how do we steer our marriages to be good and satisfying, we have to ask the question behind the question, which is, what kind of marriage are your words producing? Words are incredibly powerful because with your words, you say, I do. Words had the power to start your marriage. Words played a role in falling in love and committing your life together, didn't they? They had so much power. Words also have the power to say this, I'm done. So they have the power to start marriages. They also have the power to do what? To end marriages. With our words, we start marriages and we end marriages. And oftentimes, it's the words that we choose after we say the I do that leads us to this place where we start to wonder in our hearts, maybe it's better not to be married to him or to her. So, what can we do to steer our marriage to a different place? Don't you want your marriage to be in this place? I'm so glad I did. I'm so glad I did. That's different than it's better not to marry. So how do we steer our marriage from I do, not to I'm done, but to I'm so glad I did? It's better to marry. How do we get there? Well, James, the brother of Jesus, teaches us that words have the power to steer life, several things in life, but also applied within marriage. James chapter 3, verse 4 and 5 say this. Take ships as an example. Although they are so large and driven by strong winds, they are steered by a very small rudder. Wherever the pilot wants to go, likewise, the tongue is a small part of the body, but it makes great boasts. James is trying to get us to lean into an idea here that we already have been circling around. But basically, our words are not just words. Let me go a step further. There's nothing you say, there's no words you can say that are insignificant. They all have an impact on the direction of your life and the direction of your marriage. Every single word you speak, all of the words. Loud words, condescending words, manipulative words, cloaked, false word, faking it words. Listen, just a few small words, and you know this, can cause such large wounds. That's what James is trying to teach us here. Listen, even the lack of words can speak volumes and steer the marriage in a direction that you don't want it to go. The words you use will steer you to the marriage you choose. That's what we need to learn together here today. They're so important from navigating after we say I do to a hopeful and good and desirable marriage. It's the words you use that will steer you to the destination of your marriage. Now there's a phrase in here. It says that the rudder will steer the ship wherever the pilot wants to go. And so we have to dig into this word wants to, because what it really is putting his finger on is desires, right? And it might be better translated wherever the pilot is inclined to go, which this carries an idea of a sudden or a rapid impulse. So like a shift, like a quick one. And so we get the idea here that our emotions and our reactions can shift our desires in the drop, of an instant, right? You've experienced this. Things are great. You thought the marriage was doing fine. One word wrong, and it's off course again. And so we know this. We know this. In fact, in Acts chapter 14, Paul goes into a community that didn't know Jesus, and he starts, sharing Jesus, and he has such incredible success and influence with his words. People are trying to figure out how to worship Jesus, make him Lord, and then, a few, days later, Jews roll into town, and it says that they start to sway the crowds. And then in the drop of an instant, they had this sudden internal shift based on some words of some influential people, and now they stone Paul. And they drag him outside and leave him for dead. That's the same word as being used here, is a sudden shift. The word inclined, in this idea of it makes great boast, is that there can be such a sudden change in emotion that leads to a different outcome. See, all it took was a few words to suddenly shift people against people. And all it takes is a few words, a few reactions, a few emotions to cause us to go off the path. James continues, consider what a great forest is set on fire by a small spark. The tongue also is a fire, a world of evil among the parts of the body. It corrupts the whole body. It sets the whole course of one's life on fire and is itself set on fire by hell. I don't know if you can say that any stronger than James just said it. All kinds of animals, birds, reptiles, and sea creatures are being tamed and have been tamed by mankind, but no human being can tame the tongue. It is a restless evil, full of deadly poison. So, with that in the backdrop, how do you fight for a desirable and a good and satisfying marriage? And it starts with us coming and understanding that we need to respect the influential and the directional potential of our words and how they steer our relationships and how they steer our most important relationship with our spouse. Listen, and this is somewhat, takes the load off a little bit, I hope. We can't tame our tongue. What am I saying? I'm saying that no one in this room is going to be able to always say the perfect thing to, steer clear of conflict, right? But what if we can learn to train it? Maybe we can't tame it, but what if we can learn to train our tongue? See, because you're gonna use words. It's not a matter of, am I gonna say things or not? And so what we need to do is we need to choose the words we use so that they will fight for the marriage. What if there were some words or some phrases that we could choose that would steer our marriage where we want to go? Or if we get off the path, they would turn us back in the direction of good and satisfying. And because James calls our words and our inability to tame our tongues a restless evil, guess what? We have to have a daily strategy to combat that. We have to learn how to fight with words. That's what we need to do because we're going to use them. So let's figure out how do we leverage this power to fight for the marriage. And so what I want to do in the conclusion of this series is I want to hand you three phrases that you are absolutely going to need to steer your marriage from the I do to I'm so glad we did. And you're going to need to master these if you want to continually steer the marriage to that end goal. And just a quick disclaimer, I'm going to give you three phrases, but these are not like applying business principles, okay? This is not like step one, step two, step three, everything's fixed. No, if you try to apply these without like a genuine, overflow of your heart, they won't work because relationships are not things to be managed. And so let's just not look at this as a 1, 2, 3, all right, I'm going to fix it and we're going to move on. No. This has to be fully embraced, genuinely in your heart. And the first phrase I want to give you, so important in your marriage, is you need to say these three words all the time. I love you. I love you. This is a phrase we say over and over. And, we say it when we hang up. We say it before we go to bed. We say it when we head out the door. I mean, do you remember when you were getting married, and you made some vows to one another? They maybe sounded like this. I, Tim, take you, Tiffany, to be my wedded spouse, to have and to hold from this day forward, for better or for worse, for richer or for poor, in sickness and in health, to love and cherish until death do us part. And I wish we could make an amendment to these vows, because I don't know if we understood it when we were saying them with our words. I wish we could say, to the part where it says to love and cherish, you remember that part? I wish we could understand that when we're saying, I promise, I vow to love and cherish you, we're saying, I promise to love and cherish you with my words. That's part of it. See, you and I promised when we got married that we were going to love one another with our words, with our actions too, but also with our words. How do you love with your words? 1 Corinthians chapter 13, verse 4 through 8. Love is patient. Love is kind. It does not envy. It does not boast. It is not proud. It does not dishonor others. It is not self-seeking. It is not easily angered. It keeps no record of wrongs. Love does not delight in evil, but rejoices with the truth. It always protects. It always trusts. It always hopes. It always perseveres. Love never fails. When you say words, do your words always say, I love you? No matter what you say, are your words always an extension of the phrase, I love you? See, every word you choose, love for your spouse should be reflected. There should be no words that come out of your mouth or my mouth that are not really, a way that we say, I love you. So, are your words, are they patient? Are they kind? Are they honoring? When you speak, are you saying things that are in their best interest? Are your words angry? Are your words resentful? Are they genuine? I mean, when you speak words to her, do they protect her? And when you speak words to him, is it full of trust or is it more of accusation? Do your words offer hope? When you speak, listen, does it fuel the marriage? Does it build the marriage up? Or does it tear it down? Jesus has some very serious things to say about our words in Matthew chapter 12, verse 34 through 37. For the mouth speaks what the heart is full of. A good man brings good things out of the good stored up in him, and an evil man brings evil things out of the evil stored up in him. But I tell you that everyone, makes me so nervous, and it should make you nervous, will have to give an account on the day of judgment for every empty word they have spoken. For by your words you will be acquitted, and by your words you will be condemned. Basically, Jesus is saying, on the day of judgment, your words will do the talking. Everything you say in the marriage, everything you say to her, to him, everything you say under your breath, everything you say in your heart, do you know what? We're going to have to give an account for all of those words. We all agree with this phrase, and it's true. Actions speak louder than words. But if we're not careful, we forget that your words are pretty loud too. And so what you need to do, and what I need to do if we want to steer our marriage to be a good and satisfying marriage, then we need to say, I love you. And we need to say it often. And we need to say it with all of our words, not just when we hang up the phone, not just over a text message, but in every conversation. I love you. I honor you. I respect you. I trust you. The second phrase I want to give you that's going to just steer your marriage is the phrase, I am sorry. I am sorry. Listen, every infraction or disappointment in your marriage relationship is a result of someone not keeping their word or their commitment to you, right? They failed to love and cherish you, whether it was with words or with action. Somewhere, someone has not honored you. Someone has not respected you. Someone wasn't kind to you. Someone didn't do right by you. And so what we need to do is we need to, in light of the James verse where we hear that no one can tame the tongue fully, we need to not expect perfect. And for some of us, that's a shift we need to make. Because what we're expecting of our spouse is perfection. And we just need to go ahead and say, you know what, I'm not perfect. I don't get it right. And it's not fair for me to expect perfect. But listen, we're not going to expect perfect, but we're not going to excuse when we make mistakes either. You know? And so when you fall short, when one of you falls short, and this phase right here, and you know this, it's so critical for the direction of your marriage. When somebody hurts somebody else, what happens next really steers the marriage, right? Do you know what you should do when you hurt someone that you're married to with your words or your actions, but usually it's words, or when you don't keep your word? Do you know what you should do? You apologize. You apologize. What's a good apology? Well, let me teach you one, and just another disclaimer. This is from me being bad at it, okay? This is from numerous failed attempts. This is what I would say is a good apology, and I don't get this right all the time. But here's how you apologize well. Are you ready? Let me give you an apology, kind of an example. You say, I am sorry, period. That's it. You see, when we apologize, we like to add, some kind of word after I'm sorry or a comma, and let me tell you more. And that's not a good apology. The word apology actually comes from two Greek words. It's the word away, and the other word is logos, or like a reasoning. And so the word apology literally means, if you were to break it down, is to explain away or to make a defense. This is what you're not going to do. There are no excuses for what I did. There's no reason I should have lost my temper. There's no good reason. There's no reason I should have called you that. We're going to say, I'm sorry. Period. And in the space between the I'm sorry and where you would normally put the excuse, you're going to do something different. What are you going to do? You're going to listen to the explanation of how you hurt them. Why are you going to do this? Because you need to hurt. You need to feel remorse. You need to listen as long as it takes for you to hate your actions, not to explain them away. And as you sit, and as I sit, so uncomfortably, because that's why we insert all these defense statements, right? I'm sorry, but you don't understand. I'm sorry, but, I was tired. I'm sorry, but I had a lot of pressure at work. Or I'm sorry, but you did this, and it made me do this. And, this happened, and then this happened. No. What you're going to do instead of where you always go, what you're going to do is you're going to sit in the uncomfort of how awful you feel for hurting them. And can I just say this? What you feel as you think about what you did to hurt them, it's not even close to how bad you hurt them. And we have to sort of sit there. You just sit in it. You don't explain it. You own it. You say, I'm sorry. Don't you dare try to say, I'm sorry, but. I'm sorry, this is what. No. See, what's happening when you just say, I'm sorry, period, what's happening is so important. Here's what's happening. Your heart is softening as you are listening. And when your heart is softening, this is the beginning of what will save and steer your marriage back on track. And listen to me, your marriage will not get better until both of us learn in the right way, with the right heart and the right patience, when we hurt someone else, you say, I'm so sorry. So sorry. And you listen, and you let that play out in your heart. So important. The final phrase I want to provide so that you can steer your marriage is this phrase. I forgive you. So I love you. I'm sorry when I've not lived up to the expectations that I committed to when I loved you. And the last phrase, I forgive you. When someone says to you, I failed to love you, and it hurt me so much that I hurt you. In fact, I'm so sorry. I don't want to hurt you. I want to fight for us. I shouldn't have done X. I should be less selfish. I want to be more honoring. I want to keep my word next time. I want to treat you with more respect. I want to not lie to you. When someone does that, or some version of that, here's what you do. You say, I forgive you. And you have to say it. We don't say it enough. We have to say the words, I forgive you. Why do you do this? Because you promised to. When you said, I do, you said, I will love and cherish you. And when someone has humbled themselves and said they are sorry, and it's genuine, it's time for you to keep your word. When you say, I forgive you, you're also saying, I love you. And it's so, so important because we have to say this even though we don't feel like saying it. And that's normal. Because what you feel when someone hurts you or does something to you or says something to you, you feel hurt. And that's very real. And what you're hoping that they see that hurt. They see the damage they've done. And the reason, at least the reason why you want to show them that hurt is because once they see, you hope that there's an opportunity for growth and reconciliation. Sometimes there's a good chance that the other person won't fully see the hurt you experienced. But listen, even when that happens, even when they're not contrite, in order for your heart to heal, you need to forgive. If you want your heart to heal fully, you need to forgive fully. See, there's a marriage in this room today, and right now, the forgiveness is about halfway. And there needs to be an outward or an inward change and an outward expression to the other spouse. Hey, you know what? I've been holding this against you, and it's time for me to forgive you. And you need to do that. You need to do that. And it's not just saying, I'm condoning what you did. See, that's what we're worried about. We're worried about the risk of getting hurt again. But what we need to understand is when we forgive someone, what we're doing is we are saying that hurt or that infraction, that is not going to control this marriage. And that's not going to control me. And it's not going to steer me or this marriage. And see, we can get our marriages back on track, and sometimes it's in the hands of the person who just needs to say, I forgive you. I forgive you. I'm going to release you. You hurt me, but we're going to fight for this marriage. And listen, just because you apologized, don't expect everything to go back to normal within 5 minutes. No, it might take some more work on your part to prove that you're trustworthy again, and that's normal. Forgiving someone is hard, and you need to be respectful of that. It might mean they need a little bit of space, a little bit of time. And especially if what you've done is particularly hurtful, maybe abusive, maybe affair-related, like you can't expect everything to be stacked back up the way it was before it all got knocked down. It may not all go back to normal. And you need to be okay with that. You need to be okay with there's a new foundation that has to be built, and that takes time. Maybe the bottom line of this conversation on forgiveness is if you've hurt someone, you need to understand this. The time it took for you to hurt that person is far shorter than the time it will take for that person's heart to heal. And that's true because our words are powerful. They have the ability to tear up or to tear down or to build up. From a place of forgiveness, every one of us needs to say, I forgive you, and understand that it takes time to rebuild things. Now, as I've been married for almost 14 years, I've had to say these three words, these three phrases, over and over and over and over. They have the power to steer your marriage. I love you. Say I love you. I'm sorry. Say I'm sorry. I forgive you. Say I forgive you. See, mastering and genuinely using these three phrases, these three different phrases, is how you steer your marriage from the I do to the I'm so glad we did. The words you choose will steer your marriage. It will steer you from the I do to the I'm so glad we did. It's so much better that we're married. How do you end up in a good marriage? How do you end up in a desirable marriage? You decide that we're going to use words that steer our marriage in the direction that we choose. Now imagine if you decided you were going to fight for it. Imagine if you decided, maybe you're not married, you're going to fight before it. You're going to become a godly person. You're going to look for a godly person. Imagine if after you got married, no matter what's going on in the world, in your lives, in your work, with the kids, you're going to fight to stay close. Imagine if you're going to become the kind of spouse that fights on the thought level, that you understand that what you think in here comes out here. And imagine if you're able to steer the marriage with your words. Every time you spoke, it was a way of saying, I love you. And when you misspoke, you said, I'm sorry. And if you were also the kind of spouse that said, I forgive you. I forgive you. If you can do those three things, your marriage will turn in a direction that you want it to go. Jesus Christ on the cross, completely beaten, there on your behalf and my behalf, stripped naked, nails through his wrists and his feet. And as he's on the cross, trying to reconcile our relationship with him, Jesus says a few words, and words are powerful. As he is being wrongly killed for things he didn't do and for the sins that we committed, do you know what Jesus utters from his heart? Father, forgive them, for they know not what they do. They know not what they do. Jesus gives us some words that have transformed our lives. He said to you and to me, I forgive you, even when you've messed up, even when you've fallen short. I will do everything possible. I will get uncomfortable for you. I will die for you because I love you and you're truly sorry and I forgive you. So here's what we're going to do. We're going to have a little bit of time this morning as we sing together. We're going to sing a song. And what I want you to do is, in the response to this song, I want you to think to yourself, what do I need to confess right now? What do I need to say I'm sorry for? Maybe to God. Maybe you need to say you're sorry to God and say, I haven't been living my commitment to you right. I haven't loved you, and I need to come back to you. I need to say I'm sorry. Maybe you have some tension with your spouse. And what you need to be thinking about as we sing is you need to be thinking about, this is how I need to say I'm sorry to my spouse. Or maybe you've been hurt. And as you think about what Jesus did for you, you need to think about, what does it look like for me to look at that person and say, I forgive you. I forgive you. So if you would you stand? Your marriage hangs in the balance of whether or not you can daily say, I love you, I'm sorry, and I forgive you. And we have the power to do those three things because of what Jesus has done for us. And so what I want you to do is I want you to cry out to him. I want you to ask him for help. I want you to see his great love for you and let it move into your heart and flow into your relationships and into your marriages. And then after we finish the song, we're going to have a time of communion. So I just want you to prepare your heart for this time. I want you to get right with God. Get right with your spouse in your heart. I'm going to pray. God, thank you so much for the example that you have shown us on how to fight for a relationship. You love us so much, God. You want to see every marriage in this room get to a place of good and satisfying. I pray that you would help every couple in this room have a strong love for one another with all of their words and all of their actions. And I pray for every couple in this room where there needs to be some confession and some apologies and some sorries. I pray that those would be true and heartfelt, and you would help us grow into better human beings. And God, I pray for those in the room that are holding on to something that hurts, that they would look at your great example of forgiveness and be moved in their heart to forgive. So we come right now to you, God. We love you. We ask that you move in us, that we leave this place different than we came in, that our marriages leave different than they came in. In Jesus' name, amen.